Is it still worth grinding competitive Fortnite? If this is you asking yourself this question, then this video is for you. And unlike the vast majority of videos out there, I'm going to give you the answer straight away. And that is, no. I don't believe you should be attempting to go pro or putting hundreds of hours and taking a vast majority of your time throughout your everyday lives to compete unless you obtain or have these components. Be sure to stick around for the entirety of this video, as the goal here is to help answer questions you may be having and relieve stress if you are currently dealing with it. Get ready to watch and listen to the most realistic and honest competitive Fortnite video on YouTube. This is the truth about competitive Fortnite. Disclaimer, this video is highly related to Fortnite, but includes components that are carried throughout aspects in life outside of Fortnite and gaming. Also, this video is not meant to discourage playing or competing in Fortnite, nor to be a one-sided argument. The goal of this video is to inform those of you who may be in a situation similar to this topic or may be in need of questions answered, especially if you are someone who does play Fortnite and plans to, or has been within the competitive scene. Lastly, before we begin, if you're a current Fortnite player, you more than likely don't hear or see enough about these topics. So if you find this boring or unnecessary to discuss, then that's a real shame. But I ask of you and encourage you to take this time and listen, as it may and should help you throughout your future. And yes, I understand what some of you will say in the comments. It's a video game, but understand that for a good amount of people, it's their career. This video will consist of 3 categories: why it is still worth your time to grind competitive Fortnite, why it is not worth your time, and then I'll be discussing and sharing my own personal experiences within the competitive scene and community, as well as some other important notes worth sharing. Timestamps will be listed in the description below, but now that we got all that out of the way, let's get straight into the video. To start, I would like to address the opposing side and factors as to why it still would be worth grinding the game competitively in a summary of 4 subtopics. It is important to understand the fundamentals seen in our everyday lives outside of the gaming setup, like these 3 components, as it is well overlooked by 99% of players. Self-discipline is defined as, quote, the ability to make yourself do things you know you should do even when you do not want to, unquote. This is something that an incredible amount of players fail to evaluate to do because, as the definition states, it's something we don't want to do, thus being ignored. The most notable within Fortnite is improving at solos. For the most part, no one enjoys playing solos, as it can become lonesome and boring, thus causing players to quit rather quickly. But you'll hear this advice come from almost every improvement, guides, and tip videos out there, because it's critical to become better at solos for one's own gameplay, as it will only help the player along the way within the competitive scene or just the gameplay itself. However, the problem here is that the game quickly becomes stale, especially if you don't have anyone to talk to. It's why players will refuse to play solos for multiple hours a day, or it's because they just don't enjoy playing solos in general. It's not even just solos, as this can include a variety of components like working on mechanics, editing, piece control, fighting, and much more. This is understandable, as spending time on these components can remove the fun out of the game. Unfortunately, this is failing self-discipline, and worsens if one does not take accountability. It's important to understand self-discipline and accountability are not the same. Taking accountability is defined as, quote, being responsible for what you do and the ability to give a satisfactory reason for it, unquote. This is the action that is seen when one realizes that they made a flaw, which would then lead to self-discipline, only if one takes action accordingly. For example, if you need to improve at solos to prepare for a solo victory cup, but shove it aside and instead go out to play duos or squads, then comes tournament day, and you perform poorly, but you know and admit what you did to prepare was not good enough. This is taking accountability. But in order to make any of this happen, one cannot forget about motivation, which is what gives one the desire and willingness to behave a certain way or do something. We are given the gift of having intelligence, having instincts, and the mindset for passion. Motivation is an internal state of mind, which creates complications in this topic, as this relies on the functionality of the brain. Regardless of this, to make motivation happen, one must set a goal and create a standard to achieve that goal. However, in order to make any of this happen, one must understand, come open-minded, and be honest with themselves. Take note that while all 3 of these fundamentals are similar, all 3 have their differences that take part in creating a stronger element for success. Fortnite is not going anywhere anytime soon, as the game continues to evolve and break records. At the end of last year in 2023, Epic Games released Unreal Engine 5 for all creators with new features and improved performances, providing users with greater flexibility and ideas than ever before. Alongside this, Epic Games released Creative 2.0 within Fortnite, which in comparison to Creative 1.0 has provided map creators with greater freedom and enhanced programming to work with that was limited within Creative 1.0. Not many players understand that Fortnite has a purpose in serving as a product presenting the technological capabilities of Unreal Engine. Not to mention, Fortnite is a free-to-play game, and has had an incredible success for the past 6 years since its release, which from a business standpoint for other games is extremely difficult to go up against, especially since it is continued to be enjoyed by millions of players. We are currently seeing proof of this right now with the evolution of Fortnite releasing LEGO Fortnite, Rocket Racing, and Fortnite Festival. To introduce this, we got to experience the Big Bang live event as part of the end of season event for Fortnite OG, which saw over 11 million concurrent players logged in simultaneously to view the event, breaking the Marshmallow concert that took place on February 2nd, 2019, seeing 10.7 million players, and just short of the Travis Scott concert that took place from April 23rd through April 25th, 2020, of roughly 12 million players logged in at the same time. And like I mentioned, that same reason we got to take a trip down memory lane revisiting the map where Fortnite Battle Royale was born, which saw numbers Fortnite had not seen in a long time, with 2 to 3 million players logged in daily throughout the short season, including a record-breaking 44.7 million players in one day and 102 million hours of playtime. Along this, Fortnite made history, breaking another record, surpassing over 100 million players playing Fortnite in the month of November alone, with all statistics being confirmed by Epic Games themselves. This made news, convincing the world that Fortnite made a huge comeback. And lastly, for the competitive side, not too long ago, we witnessed Fortnite's biggest LAN event since the World Cup with the Fortnite Global Championship, which saw a major increase in viewership in comparison to the 2022 FNCS Invitational by over 100,000 viewers. It's clear that Fortnite is not going anywhere for a long while. As I mentioned before, Fortnite is a free-to-play game, which will continue to see new players increasing the player base, keeping the game alive. Along with this, official in-game tournaments and competitions with cash prizes are free to play and open to everyone. Anyone can show up the day of, cash cup, and rise to the top. In Chapter 4, Fortnite introduced Victory Cups, a 2-round tournament where thousands of players can qualify for the second round, where the only placement that matters is getting a victory royale. In Round 2, players are given 3 games in a 1-hour period where each win is worth $100. Throughout the past year, Victory Cups have impacted thousands of players globally who have won a game and achieved their first official in-game earnings. This can give players the opportunity to make a name for themselves and get their name out in the competition and community, and perhaps provide a better chance of finding more players to grind with and teammates to play tournaments. As of 2018, Fortnite has entered the esports space and has made appearances on multiple occasions with huge successful showings like the 2019 Fortnite World Cup, 2022 FNCS Invitational, and most recently, the Fortnite Global Championship. Today, hundreds of thousands of players continue to play and compete in competitions, with numerous players earning the entitlement of becoming a quote-unquote pro player, as well as establishing themselves on esports teams. Alongside this, players have been able to place consistently at the top of the leaderboard to make this a stable financial income, some players of which have been in the competitive scene since the beginning of competitive Fortnite. On the other hand, Fortnite has changed lives through content creation, from casual to streaming to analytics to reporting and competitive. Most recently, competitive Fortnite content creator JCM has been on the rise at a rapid rate on YouTube and streaming, sharing his work that the competitive content scene is still relevant and is worth the time and work put into it. JCM went from averaging 1k to 10k to now around just under 100k views on average, with multiple videos seeing over 100,000 views, all throughout the past year. He was also given the opportunity to join Zen Esports, where he currently represents. Not to mention, JCM is also a competitive player competing in every in-game tournament he can while making content alongside this. Behind the scenes, JCM has also tremendously improved his skills at a rapid rate, with his recent placements throughout Chapter 4, OG Fortnite, and now Chapter 5 in comparison to the previous chapters with his content and stats to prove it. JCM's accomplishments are living proof that competitive Fortnite content is still relevant and can have a stable income. Lastly, on the casual side of Fortnite content creation, the names you will hear and see like Ninja, CypherPK, Lucifer, LEA, and the list goes on. Their accomplishments themselves can explain how Fortnite content creation can be stable financially. Once again, Fortnite at the end of the day is a video game. Overall, it's for our enjoyment and entertainment. So if you enjoy playing the game competitively, then that's completely fine. Keep doing your thing. While there are great things to come out of competitive Fortnite as a pro player, content creator, and streamer, one must understand the truth. And that truth is understanding that not everyone will become a top pro player or content creator and streamer. It's a worldwide fundamental seen throughout all jobs and situations. Once again, this is not meant to discourage anyone, but to address the situation if failure were or is to occur, and to help bring disclosure and comfort. Now let's discuss why it would not be worth grinding competitive Fortnite. Let's first begin by addressing longevity. As we know, Fortnite has been released for over 6 years now, since making its appearance as a free-to-play game back in autumn of 2017. During this time, Battle Royale games were the new and big trend within the gaming industry. As a player interested in competitive gaming, one must understand that there have been other players interested in the scene since the very beginning and continue to dominate the competition to this day. Players like Booga, Mr. Savage, Tayson, Aqua, Bizzle, Zypha, and many other pro players seen since before the Fortnite World Cup at the summer and fall skirmishes of 2018 and have continued to place at the top of the leaderboard for 4 to 5 years. And why is this, you may ask? It is because of their commitment and time and effort put into the game with ultimate goals. If you are considered a quote-unquote pro, besides regularly placing at the top of the leaderboard and earning cash prizes, then you have been given a title that recognizes that you have mastered something, in this case, Fortnite. So, even if a pro decides to take a break, let's say 2 months, or even longer, they can come back and still see themselves dominating the competition, because that skill they have developed doesn't go away very easily. Take for instance EU Pro Mongrel, who has recently made his return and has played the 2 most recent FNCSs, and has been placing at the top of the leaderboard yet again. It's worth mentioning, upon making his return, throughout the time of his retirement and before making his return on the arrival of Fortnite OG, would rarely hop on Fortnite. But during those streams, we could see that his mechanics still looked great, even if he didn't play on a regular basis. And that is because the muscle memory that he has trained himself when putting in the hundreds of hours quickly recognizes the action and task, making him able to still have it in him. Now, during Chapter 5, Mongrel has been streaming Fortnite every day, and has been looking like his old self again. Of course, he has all the time in the world to grind, so obviously he can get better at a rapid rate and timely manner, someone may be arguing. But we must consider that before then, Mongrel did not have as much time on a regular basis to grind the game, as he was younger and had school, but yet was still able to rise to the top and qualify for the World Cup multiple times. It's clear he managed his time well and practiced effectively. Though, moving on, it's why these pro players continue to place at the top of the leaderboard. They are on the game on a regular basis, but practice effectively. Lots of these players have established themselves to a point where it's a career, or they can be online from 5 to 8 to over 10 hours a day on a regular basis. So, if you are a player who is interested in competing, or has been competing for a couple of months or even years, you need to understand that you are automatically behind the competition when it comes to your experience, making the task more difficult to rise to the top. This brings me to the next topic, and that is time. Now, just saying time is a broad term, so I have broken it down to 4 parts: age, management, financial situation, and location. To start, recognizing your age is important, as many of you watching this video are on the younger side of the spectrum. Many of you are still in school, some in college, maybe you have a part-time job, or full-time. Perhaps some of you are not at the legal age to compete, which in Fortnite is 13. But you still might be thinking about competing someday. As for those on the older spectrum, you more than not have a job of some sort, or may be continuing your studies. Anyways, we all have different situations when it comes to age, so our time management can get more challenging the older we get, as schoolwork tends to pile up as you progress in grade level. For those who have jobs, are in college, or both, and those in grade school with a job, you may not have much time throughout the day to get those hours that can help make progress of improvement faster, as everyone has their own pace. As a beginner or intermediate player, you would need more time on the game than a pro player does. However, these hours must be effective. Whenever you get the chance to hop online and game, one must do their best to practice and work on whatever it is they need to attend to. This leads us to the next subtopics of financial situation and location. As we know, Fortnite is a latency ping-based game, meaning whatever is happening on your screen has a delay of up to 20 milliseconds of delay what is being registered within the system and to your opponent's point of view. It's why you will see yourself getting sniped even after you have gotten to cover. However, location determines the speed at which the game registers your action alongside in-game mechanic registration and smoothness. With the introduction of NA Central for the North American region, pro players have looked to situate themselves in Texas, which is where the Fortnite servers are located, to give themselves a competitive advantage, as having 0 ping is a massive advantage. The server merge of North America has caused many players to now play Fortnite on 40+ ping, which has impacted many, if not all, players negatively, as this meant players need to make major adjustments as Fortnite becomes a much more different game mechanically the lower the ping you are, as well as the higher the ping you are. And the same goes for equipment. The truth is, playing on PC is a significant advantage over playing on a console. Of course, we've seen times when console players have placed in tournaments, won tournaments, and even qualified for FCS Grand Finals, which is very impressive. But as far as we know, 99% of the time will be PC players being dominant throughout all regions. Not to mention, PCs can become more powerful with custom modifications along with reducing settings for less input delay, lowering quality of 3D graphics to help with frame drop, known as performance mode, and reducing hardware settings to help the computer run faster. All of this requires a good amount of knowledge, as well as can cost quite a bit of money many people may not be able to afford or does not seem worth if Fortnite is not seen to be a financially secured career. And we can't forget about packet loss. Packet loss is very common in Fortnite as the games have lots of data to render, so not having good internet or being in a location with good internet connection can bring problems when trying to bring out the best of your ability, as lag spikes and connection disruptions can cause major problems. And yes, programs like Exovac can help, but that comes with having to pay for a subscription, which many people would not want or can't afford to pay. On top of that, it does not work for every location. Once again, mental health is a key life fundamental so many players overlook. Mental stability is what controls our physical well-being alongside our decisions and actions on what we do. If someone desires to go to the gym to lose weight and gain muscle, then that individual needs to have a stable mentality and physical mindset in order to get the best results, regardless of having self-discipline. As I mentioned before, self-discipline can only be the answer for so much purely in itself, as it has its limits. This is seen within Fortnite if a player struggles to perform in their gameplay. The most common occurrence of this is in training within creative. Now, before I continue, many players will make the argument that they love playing creative, or that creative is the most fun part about Fortnite. However, on the opposing side of this, there are many players that do not enjoy playing creative, whether it's mechanical training, such as crosshair placement, editing, edit speed, building IQ, etc., or it be fighting IQ like 1v1 build fights, realistics, box fighting, zone wars, etc. Sure, there are many players out there who lack self-discipline, like I mentioned, but then there are players that understand self-discipline, though still don't have fun regardless of it. This is because motivation is not present, which, as I mentioned earlier, intertwines with self-discipline. And the reason why this is so important for a player to understand is because if one wants to one day see themselves at the top of the leaderboard, to be one of the top players within Fortnite, to become a pro player, one must understand the proper sacrifices needed to be done in order to get there. Yes, at the end of the day, this is self-discipline. However, staying motivated and enjoying the grind has its role within the journey. Going back to what I discussed earlier, this is widely seen within players in the progression to improve at solos. Though the problem for the majority of players is that they don't find solos to be enjoyable. Unfortunately, the truth is, the ability to pursue improvement and greatness in Fortnite is to become a great player, utilizing your own brain power and developing intelligence. And for the most part, this is seen to be done by playing solos. The strength it takes to play solos for multiple hours a day can be stressful, not to mention 1v1s in creative, especially if it's not tokens with nothing to play for other than improvement, which should be the goal here. Zone wars are needed to be played and repped for the sake of improvement. However, in order for this to be done, there needs to be sacrifices made, the main one being the decision of abandoning fun with friends, as they can be an influence, and in most cases the influence is negative. However, by recognizing maturity and self-control, this revolves that you don't necessarily have to fully abandon your friend group, but at least take a few hours to yourself each time you get a chance to hop online on the game and go play solos. But then you face livelihood situations. 99% of people looking to improve can't just play the game all day, as there are important matters to attend to like going to school, homework, chores, going to work, etc. Not to mention looking out for your physical physique, as it's not healthy to be sitting at your setup all day. Every so often, it's important to get up and take a few minutes to take a break and walk away from the setup to clear up the mind, as it's recommended from multiple sources, including many, if not all, of the top tier Fortnite coaches in the competitive scene. There are also livelihood hobbies and activities like participating in sports, family time, hanging out with friends, etc. But when it comes to the importance of competing and improving at Fortnite, these should not matter to you. And as much as it sucks to say it, these are what you as a player must sacrifice for the sake of freeing up more time for practice. Though, when you look at it, you realize that you are sacrificing fun activities, memories, which a youngster should be doing with their life, but instead gives it all away for a video game. That in itself sounds awful, but that's self-discipline for you. Of course, at the end of the day, this all depends on who the person is, and they may not care. And yes, I understand that players have shown that they can go to the gym and do extracurricular activities while competing in competitive Fortnite. But for the most part, those are pro players who have the time to do so. Though, as for who are not pros, but still manage the time, it's because everyone has their own pace and improvement. So this is not relevant to some, but for others, it is. Well, that ends my discussion on why it is or is not worth competing in competitive Fortnite. Now, I would like to move on to sharing my own personal experiences within the competitive scene and community. Unfortunately, as of New Year's Day of 2024, I have made the decision to step away from competitive Fortnite, and for the most part, the game itself, as I have felt burnt out for some time now, along with not having any love or passion for the game. Though, what is shocking about this is that throughout the second half of 2023, I have been earning cash prizes from third-party hosted events, including my first unofficial earnings within Fortnite. But even after earning on a usual weekly basis, it still was not enough to keep me going. I think it's only appropriate and would help explain my experience in the best way possible if I start from the beginning. It was 20th of March, 2020. I had just gone out of school and would go on to have spring break. Little did I know I would not be going back to school, at least in person, for the rest of the school year, as the world was not prepared for what was to come. Leaving that aside, later that Friday evening, I got online on my Xbox One S to run some Fortnite with the boys. However, this night's session would be different. I was in a voice chat party with some friends, but one friend in particular, in-game named Melted, would bring up the topic of competitive Fortnite. At the time, we didn't know what to think of it, but it at least got my attention, but not so much for the others. With that being said, Melted would discuss with us what he had been seeing within the competitive scene and was really getting into it and would like to give it a shot. He saw potential and skill within all of us and asked if we would be down to grind out the game even more and give competitive a try. Though, out of the 6 of us, it was only myself alongside Melted who were interested while the others stayed back. Sadly, this would be one of the last times we'd all be online in a voice chat party, as the group despised Melted and my desires to give competitive a try and did not welcome us back without explanation. Regardless, we would ignore this and continue forward with learning the roots of competitive gameplay throughout spring break, and would even compete in our first tournament, being the daily duo cups, throughout the upcoming weeks, as well as playing week 2 of the Chapter 2 Season 2 first ever console FNCS. We would end up doing very poorly, though we would not get discouraged and were happy with the experience, especially since we were beginners in competition and had only been at it for just over a week. It is important to mention that same weekend we would be informed that class would be delayed due to governmental orders of a widespread sickness, which would then become as we know today as the pandemic, with the world going into lockdown. This was devastating news. However, for gamers, this allowed for an immense amount of hours on a daily basis for players to grind and progress in skill at a rapid rate. Anyone that took advantage of this time to grind Fortnite was the best decision you could have made, as there is no other time in which you would have this amount of time to play. Not only was this smart, but during this time we would see the skill gap of players change drastically, as players who did not take advantage of this opportunity would fall heavily behind. In relation to myself, I was only beginning to learn the roots of competitive and not focusing on improving mechanics, which is one of my biggest regrets to date, as if I had used this time to do so, who knows how much better I would have been. Nonetheless, I continued to develop intelligence within the in-game leader or IGL role, while Melted worked on the fragger position. Long story short, after the delay of Chapter 2 Season 2 due to the pandemic had finally completed, Season 3 was up and coming. However, what was to come would be the worst change that could have happened. Chapter 3 Season 3 had arrived with the Fortnite map completely flooded, making for a new experience. This change, for the most part, had very positive reactions from the community. However, one change in particular left many players scratching their heads, questioning the decision made by the Fortnite team. This change was the removal of the pump shotgun and replaced with the new charged shotgun. This replacement left many players frustrated, as there were players who did not enjoy the playstyle of the charge, some who felt the charge was clunky, and some players who could not seem to get into the habit of how the charge is meant to be played. Unfortunately for me, one of these players ended up being my teammate and friend Melted. Melted was devastated that he spent countless hours on his improvement of fragging out with the pump shotgun for it all to be flushed away with the new chapter. And yes, I can already hear many of you saying, "Oh, he overreacted. Oh, he should have just gotten better and dealt with it." And while I do agree with you, keep in mind that during this time, many players reacted in similar fashion. Not only did the Fortnite team flood the map and replace the pump shotgun, the Fortnite team would also replace dual cash cups with trio cash cups. Trios had been reintroduced as the main competitive game mode, aside from solos being the game mode featured for that season's FNCS, which meant that Melted and I needed to find a third teammate. Luckily, one of Melted's friends had joined alongside on the competitive grind at the start of Season 3. However, I mentioned before, things started to go downhill since the replacement of the pump shotgun. There were also personal changes happening in Melted's life schedule, with becoming more busy with school and sports. I had much respect for Melted's decision as focusing on school is important. Our third teammate Anthony would also not continue to grind out competitive after Melted, who he is much closer with, decided to step down. Upon losing my teammates, I was left alone to figure everything out with what there was to competitive Fortnite, which to be honest, I did not do the best job at during this time, as there were only a few weeks of summer vacation left. Not to mention, I was approaching the start of my senior year of high school. Time was becoming stressful, and with having to find teammates, it wasn't making things any better. However, I would quickly find a teammate as my younger cousin recommended me to a friend of his who was also getting into competition. Though this would become the worst experience I had ever gone through in Fortnite, as this player would constantly point the blame finger to who was at fault for a mistake or loss. Calls would become hostile with no encouragement or support for one another, to the point these habits had started to become a habit on my part, to which I knew I needed to look for new teammates. After a couple of months of this nonsense, I finally decided to split ways and find last minute teammates for week 2 of the Chapter 2 Season 4 FNCS qualifiers the next season, as this is what was happening at the time. I would then go ahead and look for teammates in the Aussie Antics Discord, which was the biggest Discord in the North America region at the time, to find teammates. Though this experience would portray to only be a disappointment, as the teammates I found were both last minute, did not have any plan of what to do whatsoever, had no interest meeting one another, and would rage quit off the tournament after just 2 games. I decided to call it quits for Chapter 2 Season 4 after this horrid experience and focus on school and what waited in the next season. We now approach Chapter 2 Season 5, which would begin with the Winter Tournament, Frosty Frenzy. It wasn't as big as Winter Royale, though it was still an opportunity to make a name for oneself as I continued to prepare for the tournament, watching advice videos made by Aussie Antics and Arab. Then would come the time to discover teammates again and pray that I could find players who weren't rage quitters or players who did not want to put in the effort or not want to meet one another. Thankfully, I was lucky enough to find Daniel and Vorp, who were an established duo for 2 weeks as of when I had found them through the Aussie Antic Discord server. We would hop in a call to discuss the plan, to which we would then head into the tournament. Unfortunately, we would only be able to play 2 of the 4 tournaments that were available as a full team, as Daniel would not be able to play the first 2 sessions. We still managed to qualify out of the 3rd tournament, Session 5, and qualify for Round 2. This would become each of our first ever experiences of playing a tournament outside of the open round, which we would give our all, only to do poorly as we were not prepared for what was to come. And just as I thought things would become better this season, after getting the chance to experience what Round 2 would look like, both Daniel and Vorp came to the conclusion that they knew a lot of work would need to be put in to improve and get to the top of the leaderboard, which them did not seem like it would be worth their while. After Frosty Frenzy had concluded, they both decided to call it quits. Tragedy after tragedy kept coming my way, leaving me alone yet again. Though this time it would be different, and I had a Round 2 secured under my belt, knowing that it would help me along the way in hopes of finding teammates who had a similar drive and motivation to improve like myself. I would then message someone I had watched the Chapter 2 Season 4 live event with, who I will name Tony for this video, to see if I could be invited to his friend group he had created. Shortly after getting in contact with Tony, he welcomed me to his friend group, where I would meet many other players who also enjoyed playing Fortnite competitively. Though, while I was looking for players to meet and improve at Fortnite with, I was also seeking teammates for the Chapter 2 Season 5 FTS, which to my knowledge and was informed everyone in the group had been established or was not planning on playing FTS, meaning that I would have to continue my search. Days turned into weeks, but within a few short weeks, I had found 2 players who knew each other very well who reached out to me looking to get to work. However, the problem with this was that I was approaching 1000 power ranking, which is a system that has been created for players for quite some time now to rank players based on how they do in tournaments, and at the time was a very big deal. Even today, it has become extremely relevant again, but I will get more to that later. But back to the picture, this duo had 50 PR each, meaning they were beginners, which I was not looking for, though I gave them a chance and had long discussions with and ran arena games with. One session in particular that sticks to me to this day was that the player, who I will link Pretzel for this video, caught my attention with his fighting skills, eventually leading me to tell him that in my eyes, one day he would be at the top of the leaderboard, which is a very important moment as this would become significant today in the present. The other teammate I will call Hydrate for this video, who also had impressed me with his fighting skills, which I was desperately needing as fighting was not my strong suit by no means at the time. I then made my decision and would guide them with what I knew, and from there we went to work and went on to FNCS, where we would qualify out of opens in qualifier 1. To this day, I remember how excited we all were after achieving this accomplishment. From there, our journey would continue, until some discussions would become vague to my knowledge at times, as snaking would become the talk within the team. Snaking in the gaming scene is similar to talking about someone without the person having knowledge of it, which is still relevant to this day. It is important to mention that I did invite them to the friend group Tony had welcomed me to, where this would all take place. It was from here where the dark secrets of the Fortnite community would begin to show itself. Upon being told that there was talk going about Hydrate and Pretzel dropping me and looking to pick up another teammate without my knowledge or even considering telling me, I went ahead and brought up the topic to them myself, to which they would admit was true. We talked for some time and settled our differences, but not long after, Hydrate would decide to call it quits for competition. At this time, we were a few weeks into Chapter 2 Season 6, with FNCS qualifiers approaching. I would find myself yet again needing to find a teammate, though luckily Pretzel and I were on the same page, so we would need to find one. After some time scouting, our trail led us to pick up Tony to our trio, where we would fail to qualify for week 1, but would bounce back in week 2 after having little time to prepare. In week 3, we would decide to scout for a new 3rd teammate after not being satisfied with our performance with Tony, but this would only lead to a complete mess, which I will leave at that. Now we make our way to Chapter 2 Season 7, and guess what? Oh yes, another tragedy comes my way as if my experience thus far hasn't been a complete wreck. At this time, Pretzel informed me that he wanted to take a break from competition, or at least call it quits. Being the supportive and understanding individual I am, I respected and understood his decision and went on my way to discover new teammates once again. I was messaged by a team similar to how Pretzel and Hydrate had, only this time it would not go the route and the teammates I had with Hydrate and Pretzel, as I could not help these incoming beginners understand the ropes of competitive, let alone qualify out of open round of FNCS Week 1 qualifiers. Prior to this, I had been looking for teammates for the Trio Cash Cups, only to discover disappointment having to team up with Rage Quitters and other players who did not have the grasp of understanding how to get to the top of the leaderboards or improve in tournaments in competitive Fortnite. At this time, I had discovered that the discussions taking place last season regarding snaking had become true, only this time without Hydrate, as Pretzel had teamed up with who I would call Speed and Hunter for this video, as well as who I will name for this video Dorito for Week 2 of FNCS qualifiers and Matt for Week 3. Though I have to mention that Week 2 was a joke, as after qualifying for Round 2, upon 5 games in after doing poorly, Speed decided to call it there and get a haircut instead of finishing the tournament and perhaps make a comeback, in which left Dorito very disappointed, and to why I was told Pretzel could care less. This new information let me know the kind of player Pretzel was, so I was almost relieved to not be teaming up with him, aside from the frustrations and disappointment where I stood in competitive Fortnite. Chapter 2 Season 7 was now over, and I honestly didn't see any point in continuing. I had now graduated from high school, and now just a few short weeks before entering my first semester of college, which was critical to do well and give a good first impression. This was what was in my mind at the time as I searched for new teammates, with no one standing out, as I did my best to avoid players who had a history of rage quitting or being a player who points fingers. I was ready to give it up, that is, until I stumbled upon and met ShotByZax. If you don't know who ShotByZax is, he is a well-respected community figure within the photography, Fortnite, and boxing scene, well known for his famous photo of pro player SETI from the 2022 FNCS Invitational. I'll leave his socials down in the description, and I would appreciate if you check his content out if you're interested. But yeah, talking to and getting to know Zax is someone and a moment I am truly thankful for, as his thoughts, experience, and guidance reminded me where I was with myself and what I enjoyed. So I decided to keep it going while focusing on my studies and managing my time. We would move along and team up for the season, and went into Chapter 2 Season 8 with a powerfully strong bond, as even though the end result didn't show it, we felt we had performed very well in the DreamHack featuring Fortnite tournament. However, at this time would mark the return of my good old friend Pretzel, who messaged me that he was thinking of coming back and if I needed a teammate. At this point, it was myself, Zax, and a player named Oreo who was our main option for our third based on who we had at the time, but was new to competition, which was our main concern. So, with some discussion amongst all of us and playing a tournament to test Pretzel and I's chemistry, we established a team of Pretzel, Zax, and myself. We now needed to start practicing and prepare for the season's FCS qualifiers, which is a week away. And of course, knowing my luck, problems had begun. Though were not in any of our control, as Zax's schedule had started to begin becoming difficult. As I mentioned, Zax is a photographer, and at this time was a job and main income, which was understandable to put business in front of hobby. This unfortunately caused a lack of preparation, which Pretzel and I experienced before with Tony. So at this point, I had to make the most difficult decision of my experience, aside from where I am today, to drop Zax from the trio. Fortunately for us, we would sub in a member from a friend group Zax was a part of who needed a teammate at the current moment, where we went on to qualify to round 2 with the last minute sub in and preparations. While we came short in round 2 with missing qualification by 18 points, our third teammate, who I will call Seek for this video, was not too happy that we just missed qualification to the point where he would start pointing fingers rather than being mature amongst ourselves and a team and discuss mistakes and improvement. Pretzel and I were not having it and decided to pick up Speed from the Tony friend group, as he was available and in need of a team since all three of us had well-known chemistry, which would become the main factor of next week's qualifier. At this point, I myself was the living stock of someone who everyone wanted to harass, talk smack, cyberbully, attempt to ruin my hopes of doing well, etc. Many of these conversations came from people who were currently in at the time and those who were kicked from the Tony quote-unquote friend group due to toxic behavior constantly talking down on me in hopes of it ruining my chances and on a personal level. Nonetheless, this season only had 2 open qualifiers in comparison of the previous 3. This was it, my final shot of proving everyone wrong, as I vowed to everyone who hated on me and supported me that I would make round 3. Soon enough, that day had finally come. With our chemistry, individual strong suits, and some luck on our side, the 3 of us achieved the accomplishment we wanted to make happen for ourselves. But regardless of the previous seasons, I knew that I didn't and wouldn't give up on myself and prove those who doubted me wrong. We celebrated for a few minutes as we needed to mentally prepare for our first ever round 3, as this was happening 1 hour apart from the conclusion of round 2. Though only 2 of us were excited, as Pred was upset about something. I remember asking him what was wrong, and his response to me was that while he was happy by the accomplishment, he was upset that he had missed a very special event. Speed and I had no knowledge of this, and Pretzel informed us upon letting me know about this that he didn't want to mention it to us to not ruin any vibes and hurt concentration on the tournament. This touched my heart, as family to me is everything. And I truly believe one must cherish these moments with family. I did my best to accompany Pretzel and care for him, let him know that he did his part and that I thank him for it, and respect his sacrifices, and that we didn't have to play round 3 in the hopes he could go and celebrate. Speed agreed and was okay with this as well. But Pretzel kept his composure and wanted to play as he did not want to let us down and knew he and his family were okay. This was a side Pretzel and I had shared. We would spend time on calls outside of the field of competition and gaming and would build a connection and friendship. We could call one another friends and treat each other well, that is, until the unthinkable would happen. Within the achievement of round 3 opened the door to meet more players, better players, and potentially players who had a similar drive like ourselves, as the Scrim server Vital Scrims was established not too long ago at this time, had the champions level rule within the server. A player can unlock upon achieving a certain amount of PR or by qualifying to round 3 FTS. Through this channel, we would run a few tournaments that were left with a player named who I will call Focus for this video. To keep things short, we performed well as a trio, achieving Pretzel and I's best placement in a trio cash cup together. But 2 moments would play a part for what would change everything in the future. Something I did enjoy about Focus was that he thought he was very good at the game, to the point where he would start to fool around and encourage us to join in. While I am a believer of the phenomena that a player can perform better in a tournament by not taking it too seriously, I also am a believer of doing so once you achieve a certain level and skill to do so. Focus had at this point $400 officially earned in Fortnite, so it's understandable why he would act this way in my eyes, but Pretzel and I didn't have this accomplishment aside from qualifying for round 3 of FTS, which mentality didn't. Nonetheless, it wasn't right of him to assume that we knew everything about competitive, considering we barely knew him. Some of you watching may be thinking, what do you mean, FerNann? He does have a right to assume you know everything in competitive Fortnite. But understand this, I am not a professional, and only professional players as well as high tier players are really the only players who have a right to assume so. Lastly, I would own up to my mistake, as there was no excuse for my reaction to demanding Focus to hand over a legendary pump shotgun after I had gone down. The reason for this occurrence was because I had gone down due to being double teamed in a screen game. However, prior to this, Focus and Pretzel had been fooling around while I was at the moment of defense. Nonetheless, this reaction of mine shouldn't have happened, and from here I believe it was the rise of dark times. Aside from this, I decided to have Pretzel and myself drop Focus and move on into upcoming Chapter 3, where it was announced it would be duos as the upcoming main game mode for the competition. As we said goodbye to the Chapter 2 map of Fortnite, Pretzel had brought to my attention that he had put thought into the goals he wished for us to accomplish in the upcoming chapter in the year of 2022. It was from this day I would last hear from Pretzel for a while. It was the start of a new year, 2022, as well as a fresh new start on a brand new chapter. Fortnite Chapter 3 was here with the opportunity to make a name for oneself in this new chapter, as it brought a whole new map, gameplay mechanics, and all new weapon loadouts to master. However, I was not hearing back from Pretzel, who discussed all of these goals with me to start practicing and make it happen. Now, looking back at it today, it is only right that I mentioned that I had failed to continuously attempt to contact Pretzel on a regular basis to see if everything was alright with him, and the same goes on his behalf. At this time, I was not in a great spot socially. Good or even decent social status was not something I had in my repertoire ever in my life, if I'm going to be honest. Now, I know a social life is not of great reasoning to portray as the problem or excuse here to improve at something, in this case being Competitive Fortnite. Though it is safe and valid to point out that it is a major advantage to have when it comes to what can be harsh, painful, difficult, and toxic environment, especially when it is one of the worst environments in gaming itself. Nonetheless, at this time I did not know what was going on and tournaments were approaching, yet still no sign or response from Pretzel. Finally, with 2 days to go before tournaments were to begin, I received a message from Pretzel, though it was stated with unfortunate news. To sum up the message, Pretzel stated that after some thought upon a discussion we had regarding streaming, he wanted to put his focus on creating a platform and streaming by grinding for the top of the ranked leaderboard. He insisted that I find a new teammate for the future, as I wanted to focus on improving in tournaments and making it to the top of the leaderboard. Let me remind you, this was 2 days before the first duo cash cup, so basically I had to start over from square root 1 all over again. Tournament day came up quickly, and now I was off to play with someone from the Discord friend group I was still in, as I needed to fill. It was then that I checked Fortnite tracker throughout the tournament that I saw that Pretzel had been playing it as well, though only it was with someone else, someone we both knew fairly well. Focus. This hit me like a bullet. What to me was a stab in the back. The cash cup had now concluded, and of course I had a sloppy experience and horrendous finish, while who I thought I could call a friend lied to my face and went to have a solid tournament. This trend would continue as Pretzel was seeing success in gameplay improvement, discovering and being invited to a group of players who would grind ranked and play regularly, which would allow for a rapid rate of improvement as you would have access to feedback, criticism, support, advice, tips, motivation, coachability, and opinions on all aspects of the game. tournament placements, as well as starting his streaming journey, all while I was left to rot. I'm not going to lie, this really hurt me mentally. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking. Oh, just pick yourself back up and keep going. Just find someone else. It's not that serious, Bill, it's a video game. However, understand who you are conversing with when you join your quote-unquote friend groups. Understand that you are talking to a human being. Things you may say and do could hurt those on the other end of that voice you hear or the screen you see. And realize that I pretty much have to start over yet again and find a new teammate who fits my genre and fit of a person and player personality-wise, as well as gameplay-wise. I would need to rebuild chemistry, figure out a schedule. The list goes on and on when I had that all done for the past year, all for it to be thrown away. And I didn't even get an invite or was looked out for throughout this process. And before you comment, no, the message that Pretzel sent was not entirely looking out for my best interest, as if you consider everything we had and instead throw it away and end things there. We could have had a conversation and see what needed to be adjusted. This led me to making the decision to call it quits, as my personal life was becoming rather worse, and I'll leave it at that, to the point that getting a job was a beneficial option, even if it's dumb. Before I wrap up this portion, I did still compete with whatever time I had, but to look out for a new up-and-coming player who I did my best to teach the ropes and help improve. I am proud to announce that the following season, Chapter 3 Season 2, he had qualified for Round 3 of that season's FNCS and did message me that the work we pointed out during Season 1 was a big help to make it happen. At the end of the day, I will not take credit for what he accomplished. However, what I will say was that I am proud to see and have read that I was a big help. It was towards the middle of the summer. FNCS Chapter 3 Season 3 had begun. I had just completed my season at my job for the time and found time to be able to compete. I found myself in a new quote-unquote Discord friend group as well, but then was interrupted by a familiar face. It was Pretzel, who messaged me to see what I was up to and wanted to know if he can get invited to the group that I was in. Now, I could have completely ignored and moved on, but understand, I didn't care to be upset or angry anymore. However, know that I still had bad blood with him behind the scenes. But regardless of that, rather than disturb the peace for the others, I stayed under control and respectful of the others and was mature and spoke along with invite him to the group. He then discussed competing in the season cash cups and FNCS alongside me. Keep in mind, I did my best to play in the previous season, though I was on the edge of fully quitting competition and to just play the game for the enjoyment of it. However, upon discussing it, I accepted, though I did not take this as any sort of apology for what had occurred at the beginning of the year. We performed well, at least that's what was on the leaderboard. However, I personally felt like my performance was awful and I was being carried. Then, during week 2 of MCS, Pretzel was not interested in playing round 2 of the tournament upon us qualifying for it. I was stabbed in the back yet again. And then, during week 3, I was going to play with another individual who I played with before. Speed was back for some time, only to be ghosted and sniped by him. Now, I am moving rather quickly discussing about this, and this is because this is the same thing that continues to happen to me over and over and over and over again. And quite frankly, I am confident that I have had the worst experience within the competitive Fortnite scene in comparison to the 99.9% of other players. So, in the autumn or fall season, specifically September, I was on my last straw and wanted to give this another shot, but this time with the assistance of someone who would care, that being the professional Fortnite coach. Now, for the sake of respect to who the coach is, I will not be including or stating their name or program in this video, as I do have both positive and negative statements to make based on my experience and results of the program. I would like to begin by discussing differences between a coach and a mentor. A coach is someone who provides a service of guidance to a client to help reach their full potential of certain goals they may have. On the other hand, a mentor can be seen as a mutually beneficial relationship alongside the providence of service through the guidance to the client with the purpose of developing skills rather than solely achieving a goal or task. These skills can translate not only to the specific goal or task the client may have, but with other aspects of life as well, in which the client can carry with them in their future. I would also like to touch on a mutual relationship. Coaches tend to solely focus on the performance and condition based on the task of their client. Mentors, on the other hand, tend to look outside of the realm of the task and would like to better understand factors that may cause trouble or assist on the specific task. In simple terms, a mentor treats their client as what could be disrespectfully implied as family rather than solely a client, athlete, or student. Now, in my experience with this coach's program that I had paid for, I can confidently say that this was indeed a coach and not a mentor. However, I will admit there were lessons that I can and have applied in my life that I have taken from the program. While I was in the program for a total of 9 months, I saw improvement within my gameplay, as well as gained knowledge that a normal and or average player may not have in their thought process when playing Fortnite in general. These ideas and concepts taught to me were of great use to my gameplay and would come in handy to see myself improve at the aspects that honestly I was never great at. However, this does not mean that there are no negatives to say about the program. In my final season, Chapter 4 Season 2, working with the coach, the teammate I had been playing with during Chapter 4 Season 1, who I was paired up with the recommendation of the coach, as he was also a student of the program, had decided to call it quits. I would like to note that my payment was pretty much paying for my teammate as well, which was not much of fairness, so I definitely did not appreciate that. But I wanted to improve, so I let that slide. But at the end of the day, my teammate should have paid his end of the deal. Nonetheless, this time I did not have a teammate. And rather than make an attempt to look like the coach did for me in Season 1, he made the decision to offer to play the season as my teammate, but on a different deal in the comparison for what I've been paying. However, he stated that this would include playing the tournaments, scrimming when we were both available, and offer more attention and service towards me as I would be one of the higher paid students. Quite frankly, the highest paid student. Though I am confident to say that only one end of this deal was kept, and that was to play all the tournaments alongside me. The scrims did not happen, and to make things worse, I conversed with the coach a season after and he stated that the extra service was justified to what he had offered, which respectfully is not true. He pretty much treated me as the same as his other students, but this was nowhere near fair as what I was paying for was for an extra priority of service. At the end of the day, I understand that this is a business and he must continue to grant service to new and other clients as they come in, but this, with all respect, was not justified in a robbery. This can also be seen as validation as an example of coaching in comparison to mentoring. A coach who is known for and confirms himself as a mentor is Jixcs over in the European region. Lastly, to worsen the matter, the coach did not attempt or even consider to assist me in finding a potential teammate for the future, which to be honest, after all the payments would at least be respectful of him to do. But that did not happen upon my request, which I found to be totally disrespectful regardless of the reason given. Now, of course, I'm not asking the coach to show empathy when it came to the training or trouble of finding a teammate, but at least be professional as you claim to be and advertise what you actually intend in providing your service. Especially when the service from Chapter 4 Season 2 was honestly a complete failure and only made my status look to be an awful player. While there was good to come out of the program, unfortunately it was the bad that would leave the greater impact at the end, which looking at it from the perspective of a coach should be seen as failure. Take my word, coaches in the Fortnite scene should not be trusted and disregard seeing them as a mentor or a friend as they will not cheat you or apply this to your service. Where this may not matter to many of you, when we look at the pros and top players like those who work with Jixcs, we can see it can make a huge difference. We have now arrived at Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 3, and of course, I am alone yet again. It's no surprise. One thing I would like to mention that someone in the comments by now may have mentioned is, have I considered that I am the problem when it comes to finding a teammate? And you would be all in the right to ask such a question. And to answer it, I have. And I can assure you that I am not the problem. If we're talking about a certain skill level in the game when it comes to IQ, to all aspects of the game, mechs, knowledge, fighting, etc., then sure, I can be truthful and come forth to say that I am not at a fantastic level at fighting IQ or pro level advanced knowledge of the game. But I am confident to say and claim that I am a solid player when it comes to all of such components. And at the end of the day, these skills do not determine everything when it comes to success at competitive Fortnite, as the person you are can be a factor as well. There is a saying of, oh, you don't need friends to make it to become a champion or to make it to the big leagues. This vision is indeed valid, as these actions have been done before and have led to success. Some people may be okay with this route, but some may not be as they don't find it enjoyable. Though, when it comes to the journey and improvement, it should be tough, and not as enjoyable as one may envision it initially. However, it is safe to say that the viewpoint of seeing progress and improvement made should be where the fun is. When it comes to competitive Fortnite, you are going to need to find a quote-unquote friend or a player in general as the major tournaments as it is duels at the time of making this video. So, this whole I don't need friends motive cannot be applied as much to the circumstance as you must be able to comply with another individual. Of course, you do not have to be friends with them, but you sure as do need to show respect and kindness to them as you will be spending a lot of time with them when it comes to practice to the point where you spend enough time with one another that at that point you are practically friends or might actually build a friendship. Nonetheless, it is appropriate that a player wants friends or to meet people within the competitive Fortnite community as training and creative like 1v1s, 2v2s, etc. Zone Wars, playing ranked, third-party events, etc. all require a player to meet people and can be a huge asset and advantage to a player as multiple brains are stronger than one, if done properly. Moving along, my final run at competitive Fortnite had begun, and it was tiresome. However, I did manage to make my first earnings within Fortnite, though it was done on stride scrims, multiple times as a matter of fact, but this did not change anything to the head of the game, as these cash prizes are meaningless. Is it an accomplishment? Yes. And exciting at that very moment when you do earn. However, my reaction was the opposite. 99% of players who earn for the first time have these tomfoolery-like reactions and post it on X, which is cool for them. However, at the end of the day, that $100, $76 after taxes, is worthless. Players nowadays do not care to see if a player does have that $76 earned. Sure, maybe those at 2K PR or less may do, but not at the big boy leagues, ladies and gentlemen. To them, this is worthless. Now, If you were to do this maybe 6 times, then possibly you may start to be considered as a valuable and legit player. Did I make in-game earnings myself? No. Did I work my ass off and take things appropriately when it came to teammates, practice, VOD reviews, communication, etc.? Yes. Of course, I was not in the best mindset for all of 2022 through 2023. However, I can assure you all this. I never gave up and pushed forward. Unfortunately, the hard truth is, one must have a healthy state of mind to get the best results out of oneself. And if I'm being truthful with myself, I knew I was not, and it was time to call it a wrap and stop waiting for change or hope, as this was just not in my control. Losers wait for things to happen, while winners make changes and things happen. To wrap this video up, I would like to address that if the last part of this video felt rushed in a way, this is because this video has been 6 months long overdue, and I finally wanted to get this out to the world while putting this all together at a reasonable length. I hope these arguments, along with my personal experience, can provide you with a better view of competitive Fortnite and help you along the way if you have been competing, thinking about competing, have just begun, or competing in the past. It's important to understand that no matter how good of a player you are or are at this point in time, if you are not in a healthy state of mind, it will become your main factor of making the experience from enjoyable to misery. Importantly, your worst enemy when it comes to Fortnite, especially if you have to rely on randoms you find via scrim servers on Discord to train with, know that regardless of all the toxicity they bring, you have the ability to block them out of your ears. In relation to this, your worst enemy is yourself. Sounds corny, but is a huge factor to our cognition. You must fight through the negativity that is within the competitive Fortnite community. It's easy to be negative, but the real champions can have self-control, make what may be considered as quote-unquote negative, and make it into proper dark humor to which we can all laugh with and not at, as well as provide and portray a more positive persona. If you want to become the best version of yourself and dethrone those who currently stand at the top of the leaderboard, it's time you start asking yourself if you truly enjoy who you are, and if you provide a great environment for those around you. Dark humor will all in all not be understood by everyone, as many, especially in the Fortnite community, do not consider the difference. Alongside this, many people within the scene would prefer themselves to portray as and enjoy tomfoolery behavior. But at the end of the day, we see the same names on the leaderboard that we've been seeing since 2020 for the most part. You can argue all you want about, oh, it's because they have 0 ping and can play the game all day. While this can be an advantage, sure, it is safe to say that all of these people's personas and actions are not getting them to the top. Of course, there will be improvement, and I'm sure many of those people are finding themselves qualifying for Cash Cup finals and placing at the respectable top 300 or better finish. But are they or you going to keep playing and attempting to see yourself at the top with the rate you are going? By the time you know it, you have grown up. You won't have as much time to play. The average pro nowadays is around 17-18. If you're at this age or younger, time is flying. It is time for people to get their egotistical heads out of their asses and make a change within the community. All in all, I know it is almost guaranteed that the community will not change. However, I hope for those of you who took the time to listen to this video to take this into consideration for your well-being. Well, if you enjoyed this video, thank you again for tuning in, and be sure to leave a like and comment if you would like to see more of this kind of content in the future, and if so, consider hitting the subscribe button before you go. If you feel like this was a waste of time to you, I am sorry to hear that. If you are someone that I may have described who enjoys improper dark humor and doesn't matter to you, alongside may have an ego, I hope you take this into consideration and reflect amongst yourself. But if this did not come to any agreement for you and this video made you dislike or hate me, that is understandable. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all the best in your future endeavors and good luck. Thanks for watching.